Welcome to this week's Concurrency Tech Insights. This week, we are talking about data platform in 30 days. I'm glad you're with us. My name is Nathan Lesnowski. I'm Concurrency's Chief Technology Officer, and let's get started. So this week, we have Stephen Campbell joining us. He's actually joining us from very socially distant across the pond over in the UK. He's taken a family trip over to the UK for 5 weeks, currently in quarantine, but that doesn't stop from being on a webinar. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here, even from so far away.
Awesome. Stephen's going to talk a little bit about data platform today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about AI topics. So in our conversation today, we'll talk about first why modernize the data platform. Why is that important? Why are we even thinking about that conversation? What's important about data platform, especially now in the context of the work from home, from COVID, from smart restart, from now really entering into a new normal and moving our businesses in a position of engaging inside that normal. We'll talk about what companies are doing in that 30-day period. We'll also talk about what are examples of data modernization. What does a modern data framework look like? What are AI projects and modernization engagements doing within customers? Very interesting stuff that we'll talk about over the next 30 minutes. Also, next week, make sure that you are coming to our cloud assessment and migration planning webinar. That is going to be equally awesome with some really great guests talking about what organizations are doing to prepare themselves for executing on cloud migrations and positioning their cloud foundation in an appropriate way. So let's ask ourselves the question, why commit time to modern data in the first place? What's the point? Why are we doing it? What we're seeing companies understand is that now is the time to leverage the data that they have to be able to make intelligent business decisions and to add value to their customers. In the context of returning to work, in the context of engaging in the new economy, data is more important than anything that we bring to the table because it enables our customers to be able to interact with us, to be able to serve their own needs, to be able to be informed, and also for us to be able to inform them. So what we're seeing companies doing is engaging in optimizations driven of efficiency, trying to find ways to be able to get more from less. We're finding companies that are meeting their unmet need via data. They're finding that if I can gather information that's important to my customer that might allow me to be able to provide them something valuable, data might help them. So for example, maybe you're buying a new kitchen stove and has a wonderful little oven in it. But perhaps I'm also then being able to provide a smart appliance that provides data back to my customer about the food that they're cooking, or about how long it's been on, or about the efficiency of how they cook. Lots of different things that would make their life better. That data being surfaced to them is now part of your product, is part of your interaction with your customers. Data is critical to how you may serve them. The idea of time to impact of your acceleration, the relationship between how quickly can I interact with my customer and provide value. Think about when you interact with an online retailer and you've already bought one product from them and you're getting customer service on that product. What if when you start engaging inside of a bot or calling them on the phone, they already understand what you've purchased and they provide a great experience around the data that's tied to the thing that you've purchased. So often I want that kind of experience from from the people I've bought products from, and I don't get it. I call them up and I'm like, don't you know that I bought something from you? They don't know it. And then I talk to one person, they hand it off to someone else, and it's like, didn't you even exchange data between each of you? I had two separate conversations where I conveyed the same information. Data is so important to be able to provide that great customer experience. We'll talk about customers using this around policy compliance. When I start leveraging data, how can I ensure that the data gets to the right people? When I think about modern data, I think about recoveries. How can the data that I have be recovered to an earlier state? And then finally, the relationship of this all the way to tech debt. And am I building solutions that are on the right framework? Am I still building them on legacy models of virtual machines with SQL installed on it and then trying to build off of that? Or am I using modern data techniques? So modern data as a framework is critical to how we take our businesses forward. And each of these valuable reasons are something that we stand on to be able to build something valuable for our customers, partners, and employees. So when we think about an analytics maturity curve, so many of our customers that we're talking with are starting down here in the context of very manual data techniques, driving from something that is an Excel, or it's an output that they got from some system. It got kicked out the back and they're trying to do something with it. And they're thinking about, how can I do something with this data in a way that brings value to my entire organization? And we're seeing organizations trying to do is move up this analytics maturity curve so they can deliver the value that's on top of it. And when they're moving up, a lot of organizations think in the context of these traditional data warehousing opportunities that they've done in the past. Taking data, moving into a data warehouse, processing that data, positioning it for the business to use. Those old techniques are techniques that aren't fast enough to be able to serve the modern business operational or reporting needs. And what we're seeing companies do instead is move to the modern data framework as a method to be able to achieve the outcomes that are component to what's higher up on our maturity curve: insight, wisdom, impact. We're seeing companies do one of two things. They're either moving out of this model to the modern data framework, or they're not even at either of those models, and they're saying, how can I achieve a collection of this, the outcome in conjunction with the framework, to deliver value for my customers? So going right after the outcome served by the framework, surfacing data from their historical systems, whether that's analytics or it's machine learning, driving up into higher value. And this is where the modern maturity of data brings about a huge impact in terms of how you can change the way that your business thinks about the data that it has to be able to either make better decisions or serve your customers well. So when we think about what companies are doing leading out of a 30-day period of using data and then driving that into further iteration on that 30-day period, we're seeing companies getting several different types of outcomes that are really important to them. One is just education about what the modern data framework contains, which Stephen's going to talk about in just a second. The second is the idea of getting real tangible pilot outcome out of leveraging data. So when I start going down the road, I don't just want to talk about it, I don't just want to design it, I want to get some kind of real tangible data that shows that this is delivering value. So a couple examples of customers that have leveraged this just in the last couple months. A visualization pilot on Power BI, where an Epicor system was surfacing data out into Power BI to enable an executive team to be able to make intelligent decisions, using the modern data framework, giving education about how to use it, but also getting an outcome. Another scenario where companies are moving large sets of data into Synapse. A large customer of mine has a 1.5 petabyte data environment that they're building in Synapse that had to scale up to that 20 times what it was before, needing to be able to serve a much larger data set versus trying to serve this with traditional techniques on premise. And a third example, supply chain optimization pilot, the idea of leveraging modern data that exists in the ERP system to be able to then make predictive decisions about what the supply chain is going to look like as they enter into the second half of this year and into 2021. That ability to make prescriptive decisions rather than simply react to what has happened in the past. These are all things that companies are doing quickly, not having perfect data, not having the modern data environment yet ready, and building it to be able to deliver something very powerful. So Stephen, let's talk about what the elements are of the modern data framework. What are things that you're seeing that are making up that framework, that platform, and how are companies making decisions about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of things we're seeing through now is, a lot of companies have a lot of data. We're getting data easier. Devices now are giving us data. There's a lot more data coming in. People are starting to realize that this data, is valuable. We want to know what to do with this data. We want to know how to use it, how to create better business processes. A big thing as well is we're kind of thinking, we have all this data, we have these advanced tools now. And as you were saying, to go into that predictiveness, and the prescriptive analytics. And this is kind of saying, what's going to happen in the future based on the information, the extra information we're collecting now. How can we use this to predict things in the future? And then what actions do we have to take of these predictions in order, to increase our sales, to decrease our costs, to kind of make better business decisions. So I'm going to start at the end, and this is typically kind of the Power BI level here. At the end game, most of this with the data we want to see, we want to visualize it somehow. We want to know kind of what to do and how to understand these predictions and the prescriptive actions we're taking, and how to allow the rest of the business to see this. So I think kind of from this Power BI side, there's three real approaches that we're seeing here. And this is something that's changing now with this modern data platform. We have what we like to say the two sides when it comes to reporting. And it's very much the business side who are more interested in the analytics. These are probably more people used to working with Excel. And then you normally have the IT side. And this is of traditionally people who run these data warehouses, who kind of have the data locked down, and they control the data. This is what, as Nate was saying earlier, this kind of fragmentation, this siloing, can lead to slow delivery times. Often a business user will want some reports, some data. You'll have to put in a ticket to the IT side, who will then go into kind of the SQL databases, your virtual machines with these SQL databases, write a new query to generate the information for this specific report. And now this is kind of these three approaches as we're seeing Power BI. We have on one side the business led, which is now, we're giving the power to the end business users. This is more a bottoms up approach where they can support, they own the data, they can support decisions, and it allows people to get the data very quickly. More self-service reporting, business users can go into Power BI, can quickly query their data and access it. On the right side here, we have this corporate BI, and this is more the traditional top-down approach. And this is typically, how business users have done in the past with the IT department siloed separate, and they go through. And obviously, it depends very much on your size of your organization here. But what we're seeing more, a lot of people doing, is this kind of happy medium in the middle. And this is where we have IT own some of the modeling pieces, some of the data, some of the backend, but also business users are able to access this data a lot quicker. And this kind of relies on, this new modern data framework, all these new tools and things like Azure Synapse, which is allowing this integration of data, allowing the IT and the business users to work together and really get through this process a lot quicker and go from data to insights in a much shorter time. So kind of one of these elements here is kind of this use of a reusable data model in Power BI. So really, a lot of people think of Power BI as a visualization tool or something that extracts data. This, is one of my pet peeves, and really what Power BI is a small cog in a part of a much bigger system here. It's kind of that end layer that works with the rest of Azure Synapse, as we'll go through the other elements in the data modern framework, and it kind of fits in here. So what a reusable data model. This is that happy medium of where IT and business users can come together to create Power BI reports and data that really get access quickly to the information we use. What we have is we have our data sources pushed into a shared data set here. This is more a semantic model layer. Here, IT and business users can work together to create models. They can create KPIs and insights on this data and really have this one source of the truth. Once these models have been created, and these are Power BI models, analysis services models, these are just kind of taking your data, telling Power BI how it relates, creating business logic on it. We can then share this with the rest of the business. And this allows the business users to quickly connect to the models without necessarily having to have a deep understanding of the data below it. But they can use our KPIs, they can use all our machine learning we've got on it very quickly and create these reports on the bottom themselves. So kind of the IT is owning the shared data set at the top, and then the business users can come in, use all these data, use all the KPIs and create the reports on it. So this is a great way on how these things interact. But as I say, this is kind of a cog and there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And the modern data framework is really expanding with new services like Synapse to help us get this quicker. So kind of what is Azure Synapse? I'm going to switch over now. And I think, the modern data framework, this is the future. Synapse is really, this unifying of a lot of different data tools. Originally, Synapse, the first part of this is the traditional Azure SQL data warehouse. They're going to rename this to Synapse, and this is kind of how they store the data. But what we're seeing here, and a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking is still in preview. So this is the future. This is cutting edge. This is, still coming out and expanding and getting better. But we're integrating a lot of different products into Synapse. Obviously, we can have, it links into Power BI. This is our end layer, as I'm talking about, and this is kind of what the business is looking to see. But we have this whole ecosystem around it. We have, security built in, and we have machine learning and different tools, really pushing as well to a kind of low code, no code situation, expanding that like the Power Platform, like we used to with Power Apps, Power BI, but expanding this not only to our end use products, but to our data engineering side, to the moving of data, to even some pipelines to run some machine learning. This is getting much easier, and with that easier comes a lot quicker speed of getting data from our source system right into Power BI to visualize it. So here we have a typical Azure Synapse architecture, and it's broken up into 4 parts. So firstly, we have the data. We need to load and ingest this data. Typically, we're using Data Factory, and this is a low-code, no-code source of moving data really quickly. We can build repeatable pipelines that run on the cloud. We then move this data into the Azure Synapse, which is the storage, formerly the SQL data warehouse. We've extracted that data from possibly many different sources. We've taken that data, we've normalized it, and we've put it into somewhere where we own. Now we have all this data in the Azure Synapse. We can run our machine learning off it. The data's ours, it's there in a format that we know. We can build, using Databricks or cognitive services. Again, cognitive services is another low code, easy to use, a lot of pre-built machine learning here, where we can train it on our own data. Very, very quick, easy to use, and not necessarily need the use of data scientists. But say you want to have some more complicated data, we can still have those data scientists come in, write much more complex machine learning. Now that we've processed this, that's when we can send this off to kind of Power BI, to the Cosmos DB. This is our serve layer. This is where we can now give this to the end users. We build our models in these reusable data models and let our business users connect to this data. Now, one thing that Synapse is doing as well is actually integrating all this into a unified platform. So as we go here, so this is a kind of where the Synapse is moving to. Again, a lot of these features are still in preview. So the storage is now in general availability, but this is all still coming out, really new stuff and kind of integrating very quickly. So what we're seeing now with Azure Synapse Analytics, we have each of these 4 stages available in the same portal. And this is huge. This is something, we haven't seen before. This is really an integration of a huge different amount of products, a huge amount of technologies all into the same studio, where users can easily do each of these steps. So we can load and ingest. So we have what we now have is the Synapse pipelines, which is very similar if you're using Data Factory before, but this is now controlled in the Synapse studio, in that portal, which then we can store it into our Synapse SQL. And this is the T-SQL that we're used to, runs on SQL, so the same technologies that we're used to. But with the Synapse now, with this integrated into one, we're no longer having to worry about making these connections to different databases or where our data is going. This is all unified in the same platform. We then can process. It uses Apache Spark. And actually, one of the preview Synapse Analytics products is that we're seeing something similar to Data Factory, where we can run complex pipelines on the process layer. So they're really integrating that and with cognitive services, making this a much more low-code, no-code situation, where you can run much more complicated machine learning processing tools in that Synapse Analytics with less code, get that quicker to market. And of course, this is all unified in the what we call the studio. So it's the one portal where we can see all these different processes come together. We can actually integrate some Power BI workbooks straight into that Azure Synapse portal. And that's pretty amazing that we have this one area where we can go from, using our very first step of picking the data up from our source systems and transforming it into all the way through storing, processing, machine learning, and then actually serving it to the end user, all in the same portal, which is huge. And then this is really kind of our process to summarize, how we go from getting some data from our Power BI and we work through this process. And this is just a use case, and this is our technology and our methodology on how we've done this in the past. So pretty much we want to pick our most impactful data. So when we're starting a Power BI pilot, we're going to say, we'll start off with what reports we really want to see, what's driving this business. And then after that, once we've decided some data that we're going to start off, is kind of in an iterative approach, we're going to design some data stories. This is really important, our methodology here. We don't want to just give users kind of tables of information. This is descriptive data, maybe low on the analytics maturity curve. We really want to tell a story with this data. We want to say how the company is being happening, where they're going, and what actions they can take to correct anything that's going wrong or increase stuff that sales, basically get on a better path. We can then load, transform, and store data. So now that we know which data stories and which questions we're trying to answer, the story we're trying to tell, we'll go get that data from the sources. We'll load it into the Synapse and we'll transform it. We then, once we have this data, we own this data, we can model it, we can create our KPIs, our key performance indicators, and feature extraction. We can extract features and important bits of information off this. This is all in the Synapse portal all together. Now that this data is in this place, and we can run the machine learning and the AI off this. Then finally, we can start, creating the dashboards, and here we have self-services reporting. This is actually allowing the end business users connecting directly to a data. They can even have natural language processing where they can type questions to the data, and AI algorithms in the background will spit out graphs if things answers the questions most directly. And this is a huge and very powerful and quick way of getting from our source data, which we're getting a lot more of, to really answering insights and questions, giving end business users the ability to really see what they want to see without long lead times, without having to go through long processes. And all of this is unified into the same Azure Synapse portal with integrated security. So, best in class security. We have scalability and all the features you'll find in Azure and what make Azure such a great platform, all unified into this single portal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen. That was a great overview of the relationships between the modern data framework and how you surface that information to the customer, the employee, as well as how the data flows through that process and how you get started. So thank you so much for taking time on that. That's awesome. Now we're going to move into a brief conversation about how companies are getting outcomes from analytics and AI. So once you have done some of this work to start leveraging Synapse to surface that data, to put it in a position where people can make decisions, how are companies making those data-driven decisions? And what we're seeing companies doing is maturing from the conversation of what had happened, which is where a lot of our analytics has been for many years, and instead moving up to why did it happen, what might happen, and instead, what should I do? What we've often done is we've made decisions based upon what happened in the past. And we've used our intuition to be able to think about what happened in the past and make future decisions. But oftentimes the past is not a predictor of what is going to happen in the future. Think about the economic month-to-month data that happened, or even year-to-year data that happened pre-COVID. And then understand that COVID changed that. And if we use simply the past to make those decisions, we wouldn't be able to make an appropriate decision for what happened post-COVID. Instead, We need to be able to now make decisions that are informed by the past, but also use what we can gather about the future with decision-making technologies that inform our intuition to be able to make better data-driven decisions. And that's where our analytics maturity is really driving us. And that's where Synapse, big data, AI allow us to build on the techniques from the past to be able to do better things, make better decisions than we would have made before. You can see in front of you a lot of different ways that we may be making decisions based upon machine learning and AI. Those decisions vary based upon different types of machine learning models. Perhaps you're making supervised learning decisions that are based on forecasting. Or perhaps you're making real-time decisions based upon navigation or informing a person on what they should do. Maybe you're making an interface where someone's picking a product from your product catalog and you want to make a real-time decision on what product you provide them to pick from. That may be something that's learning as it goes. Perhaps even moving into unsupervised learning scenarios where we're targeting recommended systems, or we're thinking about big data, meaningful compression of data. We're talking about structural discovery. So when you think about machine learning, think about it in a very broad sense of how we can leverage data to be able to make appropriate decisions. There's a lot of common uses for this. Common uses that are not aspirational. These are common uses that are right in front of us that we're seeing companies making decisions on right now, whether it's demand prediction of what's coming for your business, it's sourcing new inventory and where you should be getting it from, it's scheduling and production optimization. So many of our customers are thinking about, how do I leverage my resources to schedule my production or schedule what resources I have available for the best use? Whether it's hotel chains or it's organizations that do booking across types of products that you might be scheduling, or a rental, or it's building new production for those customers. It might be predictive maintenance. We have some really large production manufacturing customers right now where predictive maintenance alone is providing millions of dollars of savings against what they would have had in downtime or in simply replacement costs. Or it's robotics, some of the AI for good work that we're doing. Each of these have customers that we're engaged in right now that are making demonstrable progress at changing the way they engage in their customers, partners, and employees. And if you're not doing these things, what you're doing is you're waiting for these other companies to get ahead of you. This is real stuff right now. This isn't aspirational things. Think about examples of real meaningful impact. This is one that we saw from a smart restart of a mill, an organization of many mills having to think about how they can optimize the capital that they have to buy the right amount of inventory to produce the right amount of product. This is happening on a recurring basis with many other companies thinking about this problem. And this is a solvable, or at least a mitigatable problem, where we can make it better from what you could do in a sort of just intuition alone or reporting alone type of scenario. Breaking this into sprints, thinking about it in 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, getting value in short periods of time is really where we're seeing companies shifting today. And we're seeing that that value needs to be delivered in order for it to be something that is worth initiating, but the value's there. And it's there because we can build on intuition with AI and ML and visualization by leveraging big data to be able to analyze this better. When you think about the ideas of ML and supply chain optimization, think about it in the sense that your end user is getting something from you. Ultimately, that purchase from the end user, their satisfaction, the speed by which you deliver it, the cost by which you deliver it is all based upon the flow of these raw materials to the end user and how effective you are at serving that. Don't just think about that in the context of building something. Think about it in the context of any supply chain with any set of input that leads to how you serve your customer. Many very elegant models exist to be able to bring solvable problems that have been solved before and apply those to your future state. So when we think about all that, bring it back to why you're committing this time in the first place. We started off our presentation with this. We're going to end our presentation with this, which is you're committing time to modern data because you're trying to achieve one of these things: optimization of outcomes, you're mitigating security gaps, you're improving the impact to acceleration, You're trying to minimize tech debt. You're trying to provide positive organizational outcomes from your data. What we see for companies that are doing right now, they're either driving that outcome with modern data or they're sitting and they're waiting. And you need to be an organization that's driving that outcome by leveraging modern techniques and providing modern value. So what to do now? Let's have a discussion. Have a discussion about the DPI 30 engagement, about us engaging to help you use data for a positive outcome. There's funding programs that exist, there's capabilities that exist, there's work that's been done that can be leveraged to help you accelerate. Let's have that conversation. Also, join us next week for the Cloud Assessment and Migration webinar. We're going to be talking about what companies are doing right now to position themselves for leveraging the cloud, whether it's for new workloads, existing workloads, or everything in between. That conversation is really important, and positioning yourself to take advantage of the cloud is a critical need right now. Also visit our videos and blog on concurrency.com. Thank you for joining us this week. Thank you for Stephen for his great conversation, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.